Good afternoon, y'all. As y'all can definitely tell, I'm not the greatest at uploading videos. I'll get there eventually. But here's what's going on. So, as you guys can tell, this is a Y8. A month ago, I may have touched on this car on a video. I'm not sure, but this thing was pretty much just a shell with no interior, no swap. This car came with another car. There was two EKs. They were both 99 2000 sedans. They were both Y7 LXs, both automatic, but this one received a Y8 and a manual conversion. We stripped out the interior and actually swapped in a black carpet. Sorry about the mess. The exhaust is actually the next thing I have to do. So this thing has some nice reupholstered leather seats. The back one's not reupholstered, but the front two are. The other one's not in there yet. Once I get this thing to quiet down. So there's a couple little things to do in here. I haven't put the other seat in because still doing some wiring in here. The wiring that's done so far is just the stuff you do to trick it to think it's in park so you can, drive it. But so this thing has been manual converted. It has been Y7 to, well, I need to tighten up that Allen key. Y7 to Y8 converted, and it has also been OBD1 converted, which you can't see because the ECU is actually in the location it's supposed to be in. If you ever go to do that, you can only use one bolt in there. Tell that helicopter, quiet on set. Quiet on set. Anyway, there's a couple little things to do left. Power steering pump, exhaust. I believe we're putting a voltmeter in here to take up this space. We're putting a CRV cluster in just for the aesthetics of it being red, but for documentation purposes, it's got a little under 150,000 miles on it, on the shelf. Which, I mean, it's not original engine or original transmission, so, what does mileage care? I am very stoked on this. This thing pretty much was just we put in a lot of work on it Saturday. I unfortunately didn't. I was doing some other things, but a couple of my buddies come over here, and basically this thing was just a D-series swap bolted in with a manifold. No header, and the wiring wasn't done, nothing was done. Now the only things left to do in the engine bay are actually put in the power steering pump, get some clamps on these hoses, put in a lower radiator hose. I'm going to unplug this guy and tuck it underneath the manifold so it's not, in view. Really, that's about it in here. We retain the factory air box, as you can see. I don't think Y7s have it, but we actually also put in the lower part of the air box from the Y8 as well. So it has everything it's supposed to have. I'm very excited. Very, very, very excited. I think I said it already, but this thing is OBD1 converted with a carrot top tuning harness. The only modification we had to make for this was we're not using an OBD1 manifold. So we had to rewire the IAT from the round plug that would usually be on the intake manifold. We had to extend it and put on the square plug so it would actually clip into the factory IAT location of the OBD2 model. So that was very easy to do. Obviously easier than swapping another manifold on, which this is kind of debatably, this is the superior manifold. I am very excited. It does fire up and run. It does absolutely fire up and run. Let me prime the fuel pump a couple times. Starts right up. Idling beautifully. get into dialing up the idle and stuff like that once we kind of put it back on the ground, you know. We'll get to the little stuff like that later. I got to look up a hose diagram so I can figure out what these guys are for. I know one of them's for the little evap thing that mounts the fuel rail, but being OBD1, we're not really going to use that. So yeah, gonna have to look at wiring diagrams a little bit for the hoses, because we also have this thing, the fast idle thing, which obviously OBD1 isn't using that either. But yeah, this thing is coming out incredible. For a D series, I've never been as excited about really any car, because this thing has honestly had the most work that I've personally had to do to just about anything. I'm a lazy person, so I stick to the simple stuff. But this one, 5-speed conversion, OBD1 conversion, Y7 to Y8, and we had to swap subframes. The steering rack and the other one was shot. We already had a parts car, so if you take a look at the parts car, you would understand that we're probably not going to use that one. So we just found it easier to swap the subframes than to swap the steering rack, which also gives us the opportunity to do sway bar bushings, subframe bushings, all whatever bushings are all down there, they're all done. Super stoked. All right, I'm gonna hop off here. I believe I'm about to start putting this exhaust up. Love y'all. Peace.